Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting. We are holding our council meeting virtually, so I just wanted to welcome everybody that's joining us here this evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order for October 13th, 2020, and ask for an adoption of the agenda.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moved by Councillor Roth. Thank you very much, Councillor. Anything to add to the agenda from council? Okay, seeing none. From administration, Mr. Wolansky.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'd like to add another closed session item related to the corporate plan update under section 29 of the FOIP Act. Please.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Friendly amendment, Councillor Roth.
Friendly amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call the question on the motion for the adoption of the agenda. Okay, thank you. That's been carried. Could I get a motion, please, for item 2A? Councillor Grilke, go ahead.
Mr. I'll move that the recommendations contained in the following reports be approved. Item 3A, September 28, 2020 regular council meeting minutes. 11B, investing in Canada's infrastructure program. Item 12A, various boards and committee meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Grilke. I'll just ask council, is any of council okay with that, or would you like any one of those items removed from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion for the adoption of the consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. That's been carried. We don't have any council presentations or public hearings this evening, but we do have a delegation from a council delegation from the Spruce Grove City Centre Business Association annual report. Introduction, please. Scobie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Centre Business Association comes before council every year to present their budget, audited report, and slate of directors for council approval. The City Centre and I are pleased to introduce the delegation, which includes Dr. Angela Ryger-Kubos, the newly elected president, Amanda Menesterski, executive assistant to the City Centre Business Association, as well as Joey Johnson, partner from Tober Hembling Associates, LLP. And with that, I would like to invite the City Centre Business Association to commence their presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Scobie. Appreciate it. And we're just waiting for the presenters to come on stream, and they should be joining us shortly. If not, we'll move on to the next business item. Just kidding. They're here? Okay, great.
Okay. Sorry about that. A few technical difficulties. Can everybody hear us?
Yes, we can. Sounds great.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, administration, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow members of the BIA. My name is Dr. Angela Ryger-Kubos, and I am the newly elected president for the Spruce Grove City Centre Business Association. It's my pleasure to present our annual report to you this evening. And also, as mentioned, in attendance with myself is Amanda Menesterski and Joey Johnson from Tober Hembling. So on Wednesday, September 9th, 2020, our membership held its annual general meeting. So this image here shows the board of directors elect that are now subject to council's approval. Missing from this image are Vice President Sharon Yeast, as well as our Treasurer, Dr. Ron Haynes. The attached audited financials, as well as our 2021 budget, were presented and approved by our membership at our AGM. So here we have our slate of directors that was elected at our AGM. So myself from Back on Track Chiropractic, our Vice President Sharon Yeast from Gifts and Gadgets, our Treasurer Dr. Ron Haynes of Evergreen Family Dental, our Secretary Mandy Kenworthy from Jack's Drive-In. Our newest director this year from LaBerge Engraving is Pauline Commission. And we also have Joseph Boros from Elation Glass and Vape, Kirsten McCuitt from Ward School of Dance, Christine Vino representing The Parlor, Amanda Wilhock from Wilhock Beef Jerky, Victor Morose from Metro Horizon Corp, our wonderful councillor Aaron Stevenson on our board, as well as a representative from the Greater Parkland Regional Chamber of Commerce, who is Melissa Johnson. So before you here is our proposed budget for 2021 that was presented at our AGM. So to briefly review it, our expected total revenue for this year will be $57,000. And our expenses for the year is also projected to be $57,000. But please note, this budget does not reflect any of our public markets, as we're still waiting to see if they'll be possible to go ahead due to the COVID-19 restrictions. So the CCBA has had an integral role in the process leading to the development of the City Centre ARP. This has included extensive stakeholder involvement and working with the city toward the creation of a vision and plan for the revitalization of the city centre. This resulted in a number of background studies, which ultimately led to the draft ARP. And as you all know, the ARP was approved by Council on April 27th, 2020. So the CCBA will continue to work with the city through the detailed planning as well as implementation phases starting in late 2020 and continuing over the next 3 to 5 years. We believe that through this partnership, local businesses have taken ownership of the initiative, and together we're bringing about meaningful positive changes for the betterment of the community. The city centre area redevelopment plan is the primary reason why our CCBA started and came to be. The events that we hold are really intended to demonstrate a need for this, as well as to build support for the ARP itself. So we've been known to host a number of signature events indicated here. We rely upon the successful delivery of these events in order to keep our service levels high while keeping our operating costs as low as possible for the membership. Given their value to the business community and the interest that they have sparked in commercial investment, we believe that these events have added to the overall vitality of our association. We truly believe that these events, such as the public markets and Spring Fest and Fall Fest, contribute to building a sense of community within Spruce Grove, and they help foster an opportunity for inclusion where businesses, arts, culture, and community can align. Unfortunately, though, all of our events were pretty significantly impacted by COVID-19, which caused the majority of them to be canceled. So all these cancellations forced us to have to kind of get creative to still find ways to engage the public and as well as to promote the city center businesses at a time of so much uncertainty. So recognizing that that COVID did have a pretty significant impact, we had to sort of find new ways to engage the public through social media campaigns. So one of the first ones that we did was a public market logo design contest seen here. So even though we weren't able to host our markets, we wanted to keep the public engaged and focused on them. So we created a logo campaign for it. We had many great submissions, and our board of directors voted on the winning logo, which was done by Kristen McGrath. We also created these additional events seen here. So Sunday's Small Business Showcase was created during the height of the pandemic, essentially out of a need to be able to promote the city center businesses and encourage residents to shop local and support businesses throughout the pandemic. So on May 24th, LaBerge Engraving was our first city center business to be showcased. And since then, we've showcased a new business every Sunday on our website and across all of our social media platforms. And to date, we have showcased 17 businesses and are going to continue to do that indefinitely. We also created the City Center Connect boxes. So these boxes were created as a way to welcome new businesses into our city center. So the boxes, as well as a welcome package from our association, are distributed to new businesses in our area. And they include a variety of items that are donated by our businesses to welcome new businesses and showcase the ones that already exist within the city center. And then we have Wednesday's Small Business Find of the Week. This was a Facebook post or Facebook-based showcase that was again created to highlight items and services of businesses in the downtown area that people might not be aware of. So every Wednesday, we tour a local business and find a hidden gem and purchase it, create a post on our Facebook page to showcase it. We then engage the followers and raffle off the item up for draw. So some additional social media engagements that we've done, just out of a necessity to try and encourage the public and the residents to shop local. We created various contests to encourage our followers to interact, and the prize incentives were gift certificates to local businesses. And we also created a kids coloring contest where kids took the time to show their appreciation for the businesses by drawing their various establishments. And we also did a bingo. We created a city center small business bingo this summer in July, again, to help promote local shopping. So there was 25 city center businesses that participated, and the social media based event was to encourage residents to spend $5 at any of the participating businesses, and then they could check that business off on their bingo card. Once they had a line of businesses that they purchased at, they were able to submit that bingo card. And we had, I think, a total of 103 bingo cards entered for various draws. And then our last event that we hosted, which people might have seen recently, was our scarecrow decorating contest. So again, because of the COVID-19 restrictions, we were not able to carry on our Fall Fest. So in an effort to create some type of activity this fall, we executed the certain portions of Fall Fest and created the City Center Scarecrow Contest. So this ran from September 28th to October 11th and included 22 businesses throughout our city center displaying scarecrows with the theme of film and television. And the prizes were awarded to the top 3 scarecrows as voted on by the public, as well for various social media contests which were run, again, to encourage residents to stop into the various businesses within the city center. So this event was definitely a success, and our association looks forward to continuing to run this event annually. So as noted, a lot of these events began as grassroots initiative to test the community's willingness to congregate within the city center and provide value to support business development. So shown here, 2 Cool Cookies and Cones, they were a local youth entrepreneurship venture that used our public markets to test and grow their business model. So they were also featured at one of the Spruce Grove Chamber of Commerce's awards galas. So all these events that we just sort of talked about and highlighted have created an economic inertia that we feel is really benefiting our community. And we know that confidence is building when we see redevelopment completion projects like the new Main Street Law Building, which has also attracted other businesses like Elements Health and Powers Medical Aesthetics into its location, as well as centers like the McQueen Center where Will Hawk Beef Jerky is located. So it's encouraging to see that businesses are choosing to invest here and that the community is taking notice. So on behalf of the City Center Business Association, I would just really like to extend a sincere thank you to City Council and administration for all your continued support in our board since our inception. We sincerely appreciate the support that Council's provided through the BIA levy, as well as other forms of public funding. The understanding and flexibility you've shown us during these tough economic times is really greatly appreciated. And we really look forward to continuing to work with the city as the area redevelopment plan continues to unfold over the next few years. So thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions, we'll do our best to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kubos. I'm going to open up the floor to my colleagues on council. If they have any questions or comments, I'll start with Councillor Stevenson, then Councillor Grilke.
Great, thank you. And thank you to the CCBA board for presenting today. And obviously, Dr. Kubos is the new president, chair, did a great job. I just want to say, as the council member that sits on this committee, I've just been nothing short of impressed with the resilience and the positivity that this board has. When the vast majority of your public facing opportunities are your public markets and a lot of the events, you can imagine that COVID could put any reasonable board into a bit of a tailspin going, what are we going to do? Especially when this is the year that we really would have been the last year essentially for the city center to be as is, as we start to redevelop the city center next year. So when COVID hit in March, you know, and you're immediately already, you're already in the planning phase, this group came together, and I have to give so much credit, and I think the board will agree with me with that. Amanda is such an asset to this organization. She comes up with so many ideas. She put in so much time and effort, well beyond what the CCBA could actually afford. Because as you can see, their budget is significantly less than what it has been in past years because the revenue is gone. The revenue stream from the public markets is gone. So Amanda has stepped up in the biggest way in terms of still being able to provide services without the paycheck, essentially, that was there before. So I just want to say a thank you, a big thank you to Amanda, and to, honestly, to this board. You didn't complain. You found a way to make things work. You worked within the ever shrinking budget that came before you, and you've come here not with a big ask at all. We're looking at one of the smallest budgets we've probably ever seen from the CCBA, unfortunately, in the year that we probably really need to put our focus and time and effort into the city center as we start to redevelop over the next coming years. So I'm looking forward to continuing to be the rep on the CCBA, and I know this group has worked really, really hard wanting to develop that positive relationship with the city, especially going forward when communication is going to be key, when we're ripping up the roads and we're building around and making sure that people still patronize our businesses and stuff. So I know we're going to have a lot of dialogue going back and forth between city administration, and we're so lucky to have Jamie Lynn Scobie and Dave Walker as part of this group, because they are a lifeline to us and stuff. So really, those are my comments. I'll open it up to my colleagues, but I just want to say to the CCBA, I'm very, very proud of you. And I am just extremely pleased to be that member that sits on the board, meets with you every single month, and just, I know that we're in great hands with our city center businesses helping lead the way as we redevelop the heart of the city. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson, for that enthusiastic summary of how you feel. And I know the passion that you share with the board as well on that. So with that, I'll go to Councillor Grilke, then Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have one comment and one question. My comment is echoing my counterpart, Councillor Stevenson. Business owners and businesses have had to have been resilient over the last 6 months, and you are clearly a testament of a resilient board and a resilient group of individuals and business owners. And so thank you for your ingenuity and your continued hard work. The budget is significantly smaller, and we certainly appreciate you recognizing that the ask would have to kind of go with the flow. And so we appreciate your flexibility and your ability to work within those confines of our current situation. My question would just be, you had mentioned that the public markets aren't obviously reflected in the budget. If, and hopefully when they do come back, do you feel that that will obviously positively affect the budget? They're mostly break even or in the black, so to speak. They're not usually in the red. Is that a fair statement?
You're muted right now. Dr. Kubos, if you want to unmute.
Sorry.
There you go.
Thank you for that question. And so yes, we the markets have kind of gone both ways, but they tend to be break even for the most part. So we're sort of looking into the next year, if we are able to run them, that they will be structured in such a way that they sort of the profits for them pay for themselves, essentially. So we're just sort of looking to be able to structure our budget in a way that we can continue to exist even if we don't have the profit from the public markets.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm sure I speak for all of council that if you need anything, we're there with our bells on and our boots on the ground. So please keep us posted, and we look forward to next year with you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grilke. Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hadn't actually raised my hand to speak, but but I will just say the same as both Councillor Grilke and Stevenson have said. It has amazed me watching and being part of the downtown business. I know it's been a struggle for some of us businesses to participate as much, but I love how quickly things have come together and how I just believe the CCBA has been there for our businesses supporting. And so thank you so much. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Any Councillor Oldham, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. First of all, to echo my colleagues, thank you for your resilience and your ingenuity as you've navigated these last few months. It's been impressive, and your social media campaign has been fun to follow, and really appreciate everything that you've done to keep the energy and keep the spirit alive that's been gained through your work over the last few years. Question for you, COVID, how have the businesses managed in specifically the CCBA district and area, manage the COVID crisis? Do you have a sense of the access to, not obviously specific businesses, but a general sense of, did they access city supports? What else might the city be able to look at doing as this evolves into maybe unknown territory? But just a general sense. I've had some residents ask me actually how the downtown businesses have done through the COVID time. So I thought this was an opportune time to ask.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Oldham, and for you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've heard from some businesses that we hear some positive things from businesses as well as some challenging comments from businesses. I think what our concern and our focus, what we really want to have moving forward, is to try and really develop that positive relationship with the businesses to help them move forward in this next year. Because I think the concern from a lot of our board members when we spoke about it is that we're already in a pretty challenging time economically for our businesses, and now we're about to move into a redevelopment plan, which is going to be fantastic for us in the long run and was planned long before most of our businesses were shut down. And so I think the challenge is going to be just to find a way for our board to be a really positive representative for all these businesses, so that if and when there are challenges and struggles throughout the next year, that we can help be the voice for them and help represent them through another challenging time, which will undoubtedly be challenging next year when the redevelopment starts. And so, to answer your question directly, I can't say, I haven't been able to connect with a lot of the businesses, so I'm not sure, but I have heard through others that there's been some positive and some not so positive comments. So we're just hoping that we can at least shed a little bit of support on the businesses in the area moving forward into the next year.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I know you work closely with administration through Ms. Scobie, and we're fortunate to have her as a connection to you. But please do keep us posted as to how we can help the downtown businesses as this carries on over the next few years. So thanks very much for all you do, and appreciate you being here.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Oldham. Councillor Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Fantastic job, and I really appreciate the Facebook posts that you've been updating constantly. And my daughter and I really enjoyed going around and checking out all the scarecrows and enjoying what the businesses put together. So that was fantastic to get us downtown, and hopefully you saw an impact with our residents coming out there with that event. I have one question, and I just raise it because there was, I believe, some confusion last year on your budget presentation. And when I look at your budget, I see grant funding in the amount of $10,000. Is that something you're asking the city of Spruce Grove to provide within your budget? I just want to clarify if there's a dollar as that we have to look for.
So yeah, thank you for your question, and through you, Mr. Mayor, that was actually that 10,000 on there is our corporate plan submission.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, and continue doing what you can, and hopefully we can come out of this COVID pandemic stronger than we went into it. But I appreciate what you and all the volunteers on the board are doing, and as Councillor Oldham said, please reach out if there's any issues.
Okay, thank you very much. That looks like that concludes any questions or comments from council. So with that, as part of this request for decision summary this evening, we have 3 motions. I'd like to do them individually. So if somebody would like to start off with the first motion, Councillor Stevenson. You have to unmute.
We're not lip reading tonight. Oh, weird. Got the memo. So I will do that motion, Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
that the Spruce Grove City Center Business Association's 2020 annual report and 2019 audited financial statements be received as information.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. Okay, thank you very much. That's been carried. Could I get a motion, please, for the second part of the agenda? Councillor McKenzie?
Yeah, I'll move that the proposed 2021 budget submitted by the Spruce Grove City Center Business Association be approved as presented.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor McKenzie. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the motion by Councillor McKenzie? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. Okay, this is the motion that we will see the approval of the new board, and this is the exciting part of it because we have a lot of good candidates there. So I'm looking for a motion for the third motion. Councillor Grilke.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I will try to not mess up people's names. I will move that Dr. Angela Kubos be appointed as president, Mandy Kenworthy be appointed as secretary, that Pauline, I know Pauline, but I can't pronounce her last name, Kamashizan, Joseph Burrows, Kristen McQuat, Christine Benoit, Amanda Wilhock, and Victor Moreau be appointed as directors of the Spruce Grove City Center Business Association for the term beginning January 1st, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2022. I apologize.
No, perfect. I think we got the gist of who's who. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments in regards to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. And that's been carried unanimously. And I just wanted to say to Dr. Kubos and your group this evening, thank you very much for joining us here this evening. And congratulations on a unanimous approval by council of your new board of directors. And couldn't have asked for a better team, I don't think. And we're looking forward to finding out who won the Scarecrow contest. So we'll look for that post. And we'll wish you all well. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, moving forward. We're going on to 6B. We have a council delegation from Edmonton Global. Mr. Wolanski, could you introduce our presenter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe Mr. Malcolm Bruce, Chief Executive Officer of Edmonton Global, is here before council this evening to provide information on funding opportunities for the board and the shareholders of municipalities.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see Malcolm here, but I see Tracy Bernard and Bernie Coleman, as well as Mustafa Sahin. Welcome, and go ahead on the presentation.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for the time, Mayor. Hello, councillors, and also Mr. Wolanski. Thanks for all of your time that you've committed so far to Edmonton Global. We're here for a couple of reasons. The first is that we do have a leveraging opportunity in front of us. And the second is because Edmonton Global is uniquely structured, we have a business-based board. And it was the board's perspective that perhaps we haven't spent as much time with you as a council as we wanted to. So of course, Malcolm has engaged with you, but we as a board asked if we could spend a little bit more time with council as well. So thanks for the time. I want to introduce, first of all, my board colleague who is here, Bernie Coleman. And I wanted to just spend a bit of time because she really represents the caliber of the board that we have with Edmonton Global. Just as an example, Bernie had spent many years leading Alberta's public sector with IBM, for example. She has significant experience as a board member. So in addition to Edmonton Global, I think I might have first met Bernie a few years ago when she chaired Travel Alberta's board, which was so key for our tourism economy here. And we were really proud to have an Edmonton Metro Region representative chair the Travel Alberta board. She has her ICD designation. She's on the executive of that, and she has a lot more board experience. And she's just one of our business board members, but I'm really proud to have her here as my colleague. And we of course have Malcolm as our CEO, but we wanted to take this opportunity to introduce somebody who we recently recruited, and that is Mustafa Sahin. And I personally wanted to introduce him because he represents the caliber of recruitment that we are doing at Edmonton Global for this region. I met Mustafa probably, he'll correct me, probably 3 years ago when the airport was doing cargo work in the Middle East. At that time, Mustafa was the head of the Canada UAE Business Association. Just to give you an example of his experience and his connections, he helped introduce me to very senior cargo airline leaders, which is not easy to do, for example, with Etihad. He can talk a bit more about that. So I wanted to just take a moment to introduce their background, just to demonstrate the experience and expertise we have. And I'm just wondering, Bernie and Mustafa, is there anything else you would like to add in terms of your personal connection with Edmonton Global?
Sure, I'll go ahead. I thank you, Mayor Houston, for having us here this evening in council. I think this is a dream come true for me. My dad was the mayor of Major, Saskatchewan, and my mother was the village secretary, and we used to have council meetings around our kitchen table. So I always aspired to be in a forum like this, and here I am with all of you tonight out of my den. I'm pleased to be here. I just want to, Tracy's going to take you through more of the presentation that we're going to have, but I just want to share my endorsement and the endorsement of the board for what we're going to talk about. We applaud the shareholder group, the 15 municipalities that came together to create Edmonton Global some time ago. And during the last 2 years or 3 years, we've been setting up, getting our board in place, getting our CEO, figuring out the sectorials that we wanted to focus on, and really coming up with our strategy. And what we're going to talk to you about tonight is an opportunity that we all agree that we have in front of us that makes this more important than ever to increase our efforts. And, you know, all of you have just been talking about COVID and the impact that we've had. The need that we have as a region to leverage and accelerate the work that you already as visionaries put in motion, I think is just so critical. And we really want to have the opportunity to attract and invest jobs for this region, to increase value added production and to diversify the economy. So as we're coming out and speaking to different councillors, we really want to represent what the whole board is seeking and asking and recommending. And so in advance, I'm giving my endorsement to what you're going to hear from Tracy. So thanks, Tracy, for the opportunity.
Thank you for inviting us, Mayor Houston, the council members. I've spoken with Mayor Houston a few times in the 4.5 months since I joined Edmonton Global. I've been on quite a few calls with Dave Walker, but this is a real honor to be able to stand in front of you, sit in front of you, answer your questions, and really be accountable for the executive who are tasked with executing on the economic diversification, investment attraction, and trade growth opportunities for this region. You have a fantastic board. I applaud you as shareholders, Mayor Houston. You've really selected a fantastic board who gives us guidance, who gives us feedback, who gives us credibility from the business community. And, you know, I moved here from Toronto. I consider myself an honorary Albertan. My wife is an Albertan, and so this was a chance for us to move back out west. And, you know, a few people asked me, said, why would you want to go to Alberta now? I mean, oil prices are down, you know, COVID is hit. I said, there is so much unrealized potential in this region. The Edmonton metropolitan region, I spent 13 years in Dubai. I saw an economy transform itself, and they didn't have as much to pivot towards as we do. And I'm not just saying that. So I'm really excited to be here. And hopefully, as you ask questions, we'll get a chance to give you some of the details for what we will be doing going forward with whatever resources we have to work with. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to both of you. Just a couple of points as the board we wanted to reinforce to you, because of course we are accountable to you. Just reminders about how you formed Edmonton Global. The first point was that you all agreed on one shareholder, one vote. So that was really critical and a catalyst for getting that regional group together. The other piece, as Bernie and Mustafa spoke to, is that it was important for you to hire a business board. So that differentiates Edmonton Global from some of the other regional entities that we don't just see here, but in other places. And that's a real reason that we're here, to be more visible. So what I want to do is just give you just a quick background in terms of why we're here today with the leveraging opportunity. And then I know it's important to leave some time so that you have we can answer your questions and get into the details that you really care about. The first thing is, boy, I really feel like the CCBC presentation was the perfect preface to this, because certainly our board has struggled with the imperfect timing of the leveraging opportunity that we have. And each of us, you know, whether it's personally or with what we represent, are dealing with the struggle of real-time financial challenges and competition, with still needing to look ahead and have foresight into what we're investing in now to be able to build and recover for the future. So I know the first message that the board wanted to ensure that we communicated to you was our sensitivity around the financial situation and the really difficult decisions that you have to make. And CCBC was a great preface to that. The reality is the timing is now, because one of the shareholders, the City of Edmonton, has offered to put in more funding, which we can take the opportunity to leverage. Now, with leveraged funding of our regional municipalities, Edmonton Global is then able to go and seek additional funding from the province and the federal government. One of the challenges we're having in our current budget is, in order to fully access the federal funding that has been designated to us, we need to have requisite matching dollars. We've been able to work with WD to make adjustments to that so that we can utilize that grant. But part of the opportunity this presents is not just the municipal funding, but the opportunity for us to go and match that through the province and the federal government. I'm just going to ask Mustafa. Mustafa, we've looked at what the leveraging dollar is specific to you. So I'm going to just ask him to speak quickly to that.
Okay, so just to clarify, there was the funding that was approved at the board meeting at the end of May, Mayor Houston, which was the previously agreed 3-year ramp up to the $2 million level. So with the additional ask of option A that's on the table now, the leveraging for the city of Spruce Grove would be 38-1. So by that, we mean for every dollar that Spruce Grove is being asked to put in, the total contribution of the region is 38 times that. Based on estimates, which will be again reviewed at the end of every calendar year.
So just bear with us, 2 more components, and then we'll start the discussion so we can get deeper into the areas that are the priority for you. One of the requirements of your mayor, as well as really the EDO network, was the recognition of the intent of the funding, the idea that being able to leverage our dollar was a great business deal, the recognition that being able to regionally compete internationally was the way that we were going to become competitive, but that you needed more clarity on where those funds will be invested and clarity on the return on investment. So I just have some orders of magnitude and context for you, because I know that's what we owed to you per your mayor and CAOs and the economic development networks. For example, right now, Edmonton Global is an 11, we have 11 people, 11 FTEs. With the fully matched leveraged funding that we are recommending as your board, we would move that organization to about 22 FTEs. And we would expect with that it would deliver $250 million in FDI, 80 leads, and 1,000 new jobs. Now, these, management may decide they don't want to do 22 FTEs. They're going to exchange an FTE for an additional international marketing sales campaign, which I'm sure Mustafa would advocate for. But that gives you an order of magnitude and a context so that you have some confidence that the board has really drilled down to be confident in this proposal. So that's some of the context around it. I just want to summarize and really kind of go back to what Bernie, my colleague, talked about and about how the board came to this decision. At the last meeting, I don't think our board was clear enough that this was our recommendation. That's why we're here with this additional information, and that's why we're here with support of management. But again, from our perspective, just we look at this competitively too. I want to give a quick example. I don't want to be a cliche, but if we look at our neighbors to the south, for example, they do have that level of a budget. In addition, you're aware that they have their $100 million business attraction fund, and that's fine. We think that with Edmonton Global, with this regional approach, which is unique, that is a differentiator and an advantage to us. With this pooled and leveraged funding, it is a way that we can compete globally. And I think it also differentiates us because it pulls our region together in terms of our focus. The other piece I think that we just wanted to talk about was, again, just being clear in the confidence that we have with the funding and with the deliverables. In addition to what I talked to you about, the board requires an accountability report that we share with you twice a year so that you can see that we are actually creating momentum and achievement towards our goals. I could get into more detail, but perhaps we would want to go into questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tracy, for the presentation. Councillor Roth, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Houston. First of all, before I ask my question of Tracy or one of the other presenters, what's an FDI? You use that terminology.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a foreign direct investment.
Okay. I understand that these kinds of initiatives do take a bit of time to get rolling, and success stories do not happen instantly. And a lot of success stories would come probably well down the road. Maybe they take years to materialize, but are there some success stories that you can point to at this time that you can directly say that these are directly the result of our work?
Sure, and I can ask Mustafa to talk about Polycar, but I think that's a great point, and if I could just speak to that a little bit, the board asks that same question, and I think about our work at Edmonton International Airport where I work. It takes us probably 7 years to get an international flight, and we can set that as a goal, but we still have to be able to demonstrate the capacity and the building blocks to get to that. So I just to give you some examples, Councillor, we have established some of the capacity that this will go to fund. So for example, this will allow us to fully activate our business intelligence unit. It increases our ability to directly support 30 businesses a year, as opposed to being reactive, which we're currently doing now. So those are some of the roadblocks. And then Mustafa, do you want to talk about perhaps that example or any other?
Sure. The good news is, Councillor Roth, my targeted close dates for FIDs is a little bit shorter than the 7 years it takes to land a new airline. I can tell you that there was a successful transaction prior to my arrival. Petrochemicals company that came out of Quebec called Polycar. Their CEO and president is actually going to be in Edmonton next week, and we'll be doing some recruitment out of our offices. Estimated jobs, full-time jobs from that investment is projected to be about 70 full-time jobs, as well as over 100 jobs during the construction phase of their facility. Beyond that, though, and this is something I shared with our board during one of our recent meetings, I've asked our team to become much more focused like a sales organization in terms of closing business, not just the activities which leads to the business. And I said, let's take a look at the opportunities we're currently working on, which have a realistic chance to make a decision before the end of this year. And we identified 10 opportunities that we're working on. The total investment related to those opportunities is somewhere in the neighborhood of $200+ million and potentially 900+ jobs. Now, how many of those will close favorably? I can't say at this point, but believe you me, we are focusing all of our energy to get whatever we can. And it's that same level of focus which will translate into our targets for 2021, 2022. And based on option A, I can tell you internally, we have a target of 10 successful FDI transactions for 2021. Now, they could be as small as a few $1 million. They could be as large as $300 or $400 million. And there are, of course, the large, white elephants, which we chase. I personally have been working with my old contacts in the Middle East who are doing currently due diligence on a potential investment into the Trans Mountain Pipeline. All right, so these are transactions in the billions of dollars, but they are real and we have potential for that. The other piece, which I think is really important for Spruce Grove and all of the shareholders, is how closely aligned we are with the new Invest Alberta Corporation. That organization, as we know, is just being stood up. They just announced their CEO, and they've already expressed a desire to co-locate their offices with Edmonton Global. So that shows the level of cooperation, collaboration they want to have. And I can tell you that the now announced CEO, David Knight-Legg, was with Premier Kenney last summer when I invited him to come to Montreal to meet with the Energy Minister of the UAE and the CEO who manages the portfolio that includes Nova Chemicals, for example, right here in our backyard. So this is real. And what Edmonton Global is doing in terms of our approach to investment attraction is going to be far more effective than anything I've seen from any of the other significant economic development entities here in Canada. It's very aggressive. Sorry for being long-winded.
That's okay. Thank you. All good information. The second question is Tracy, you mentioned the Business Attraction Fund down in the Calgary region, and it makes me wonder whether there are other revenue opportunities that we might try to secure potentially from other sources other than the 15 members that make up the Edmonton Global Network that may enable Edmonton Global to do more.
Well, you sound like a prospective board member. That's exactly right. And one of the things that we did as founding board members was we did our research as well with these kinds of regional entities. And I guess the evidence shows, we need to start with this regional leveraged funding so that we have an economy of scale. With that, the next step is it does enable us to get provincial and federal funding, but our ambition is also to seek private investment and have those partners be a part of the sustainability of this entity.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Houston, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Oldham, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to our presenters, thanks for being here tonight. And I did want to say it was sure nice a couple times over the summer to follow along online. Not being able to maybe get to the meetings or not being part of that group. It's sure nice for, I think, many of us to get an inside look and really appreciate that and hope that as time goes forward that may continue. Question for you, how much money are we looking at? What's the ask specifically for the city of Spruce Grove?
Right. So Spruce Grove, the new funding would be $127,000. One of the pieces of feedback that we heard from you and from others was, again, the idea that in principle you have general support, but the timing is difficult. So the board went back and worked with management, and we've adapted our recommendation that we'll bring forward to at the October 22nd meeting, and that provides for flexible payment terms. So while we're asking for the commitment, we recognize that each municipality may need to adjust how they make that payment in terms of timing, but it still ensures the fairness of the entity of the region.
And that, I assume, then would be under option A, the 127,000?
That's correct.
And do you have the numbers offhand for option B or C?
I can probably pull that up for you, Tracy. Let me just see if I can read the really small print on the hard copy Excel spreadsheet.
Great.
I can ask another question while he looks at that, if that's all right.
Option B is $79,000.
Yeah.
And option C is 38,000.
Perfect. And just to confirm, these would be one-time asks to match the provincial and federal dollars. This would not be an annual increase in what we're already providing to Edmonton Global.
Well, we believe that this ask would represent an $8 million entity, and this is where we believe Edmonton Global needs to be to compete, not just for the capacity that we need internally, but as we look competitively. This would be a 3-year term because that's how our bylaws work. Having said that, budgets are reviewed annually, but I don't want to mislead council because the Edmonton Global Board does not think that it's beneficial to increase funding one time and then move back so significantly. We're trying to increase our competitive capacity for the long term and develop a sustainable organization.
So then the ask would be a 3-year, $127,000 increase per year for 3 years.
Correct, although technically every year you do review the budgets.
Yeah, that's fair. And is the provincial and federal funding a guaranteed match? Like, so is it sitting there waiting, or we have to collect this money and then apply and hope for the best?
It is the latter. Anyone who's worked to seek additional provincial funding, you need to build your base, sort of that base level funding with that demonstrated proof of the, I guess, commitment and intent. You can ask for that requisite funding. We have had success already getting funding from both the province and the federal government. And we do have good relationships with both from, I would say, both from a political perspective, but also when you look at our board members and our executive and the connections that they have into everything from trade offices to their economic development expertise, I believe we have a lot of credibility and we have a good opportunity to sell the opportunity for the province and the federal government to invest their money with us because we can leverage it and we can get outcomes.
The type of grant that we'll be applying for, if this were to go through, is it a matching grant? I mean, if Spruce Grove's putting in $127,000 and we're 138th, it's just under $5 million that could be collected in total. are we then looking for a matching grant from the province or the feds, or to what extent can we leverage that almost $5 million from our shareholders?
Right. So it's very difficult to get a dollar for dollar, and there are different funding pools that we can apply to. So it's I wouldn't say it's dollar to dollar. I would just say that we've done a good job at getting the funding that we have from the province and the federal government. We believe that we can continue to scale that as we scale our regional funding.
I can probably add just a little bit more, Councillor Oldham. So one program that is a matching program is the Can Export program. And that's something which Edmonton Global was successfully awarded this year. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use all of the funds because we didn't have the matching funds, but that's a grant where you expand the funds on the agreed deliverables and then you're reimbursed 50%. We are in the process of submitting our application for next year. And in fact, it's due tomorrow. That there's a cap on that one up to $400,000, for example. Beyond that, there's Western Diversification, which has different pools of money. That one's less predefined, and we are constantly advocating for our fair share. Beyond that, there is the government of Alberta, who has funded Edmonton Global in the past. Obviously, there's a lot of change going on right now, changes in ministry, the new Invest Alberta Corp, but we continue to have regular dialogues with them as well. And the other thing I would mention, Malcolm is quite influential in Ottawa because of his role as the chairman of the Consider Canada City Alliance, which is the alliance that includes the 13 largest economic development entities across Canada. And because that includes Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, et cetera, they have a loud voice in Minister Ing's office. And they're also advocating that Alberta needs help right now. And so we are constantly looking to try and identify those pools of government funding in order to eventually reduce the burden on the shareholders. And I think with our track record of success in the coming 2 years, that will increase the attractiveness for the private sector to also start stepping forward and contributing. But the idea is to try and maintain that steady state that Tracy referenced of around 8 million and gradually over time reduce the shareholders' burden. Does that help?
Yeah, that's good. Appreciate that. So then just for my own understanding, you referenced the meeting on the 22nd. That would be an Edmonton Global meeting where the decision, there'll be a vote that will go into play. And if it was a split vote, but it passed, it's a binding vote, I would assume. Then if the vote passes, all municipalities would be in. And if the vote doesn't pass, then it just doesn't move forward, or there's an A, B, or C option chosen out of it. But it's a binding vote that everyone will be tied to, regardless of whether they voted for that particular option or not.
I mean, that is true. That's a consequence of one member, one vote. Having said that, that is not what your board would want to see. And I mean, that is why we have spent considerable time before we put this forward on October 22nd, not only working with you or the mayor, but the CAOs and the EDOs, and trying to adapt this so that we can try to seek as much consensus as possible. Technically, of course, you could always choose to withdraw, which again is not something your board wants to see. That's why we've taken the extra time. That's why we've tried to make the adjustments with the timing flexibility to actually fund this. But you're correct.
Okay. Well, I do really appreciate you making the time and taking the effort to come and share some information with us and answer some questions. And it's really good of you to do that. So thank you for being here tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Oldham. Councillor Grilke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to our presenters, I just wanted to echo Councillor Oldham's sentiment of the online contribution, being able to listen live on YouTube over the summer was an excellent opportunity for somebody like me that has a hard time during the day to get to meetings. I feel like it made me a better counselor. And I also feel like it was firsthand account information so that when we are in front of different levels of government, we get to sound the trumpets of Edmonton Global. Our representatives do a good job of keeping us apprised, but I really appreciate that firsthand information. So I sincerely hope you continue to do that in the future. I just thought that felt like it needed an echo because it was a really great point. And just a question for clarification. Where you've met with other municipalities, you've done this presentation in other municipalities, I'm assuming the reception has been favorable. And it's not an a la carte. Spruce Grove doesn't get to choose option C. It's all or nothing. Is that a fair statement?
That is fair. Again, because that is the mechanism, that's exactly why we've tried to be so engaged. Because when we get to these points where each shareholder needs to make a significant decision like this, we need to feel that we've spent enough time and you're as informed as you can be. But that is accurate.
Okay. And I guess my follow-up question would be to maybe our administration, like when do we kind of decide where our comfort level is and, you know, give the blessing to our representatives, the mayor, of course. Is that something that we will discuss before their October 22nd decision?
Mr. Wolanski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, again, as they indicated that the shareholder meeting will go on October 22nd, and so that'll be a decision of them, and then it will come back to us. We would have to look at that. If it's voted upon, then we'd have to look at incorporating that within our budget, given the flexibility that they're providing over a 2-year period. But we wouldn't have an opportunity to come back before. Which is, I think, the kind of the purpose of this evening is a little bit to get some feedback to come to council before the October 22nd meeting.
Sure. And I guess, I mean, I'm supportive of this idea and initiative, and I trust our representation, obviously. I would be curious to know what the 3 levels look like, and I would trust that our representative would make the right decision based on our, you know, financial realities. So thank you very much for your presentation, and I look forward to hearing more on this upcoming initiative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilor Rilke. I think one thing, Tracy, I wanted to share, and I think you can maybe help with the conversation. And I know the interest of Mayor Iveson and their commitment through economic development for the region. I believe they are stepping up to a higher ratio. Currently, the city of Spruce Grove, we contribute $55,000 on an annual basis, and Edmonton contributes $1.2 million. And so with that, Edmonton has stepped up to what we would say soften the impact to neighboring municipalities and taking a greater lead in this conversation, and their contribution is going to be a little bit higher. I think, if I recall from the meeting, was about 4.5 million. So Edmonton's taken a little bit of the lion's share of the ask, and believe the ramping up of is significant in their effort to do that. One of the things that Councillor Roth had asked a question about was $100 million Calgary fund, Tracy, and that's from City of Calgary, is it not? For their so you know their economic development agency down there, the City of Calgary, has really stepped up, and you know, for business attraction and stuff, and they've got this fund that puts a little bit of a disadvantage on Edmonton, but as Mustafa said, you know, we have a lot of things that we can leverage up here.
We're not afraid of a good old-fashioned fight, Mayor Houston. We can with less.
Yeah, I think one of the conversations that we had, you know, when we talked about option A at the board level, option B and option C, and Tracy had even mentioned, you know, it's kind of imperfect timing for a lot of municipalities because, you know, of reduced revenue streams and stuff like that. But sometimes it's more important than ever to start ramping up the efforts for us to try to steer the ship a little straighter and put a little more coal in the diesel engines, or the little more fuel in the engines to do that. And that's kind of the conversation that we're lining up for on October 22nd, and so that'll be an important conversation. One of the things that I could say about our city and the leadership that we've taken is that we've always, wherever we can, we've leveraged if there's a grant or if there's something that we can do to leverage dollars or through partnerships or whatever, we've always stepped up, put our hand up to say, you know, that's the way to go. And so that's part of the conversation we've had, that Spruce Grove has been a strong player at Edmonton Global, and we're looking forward to the conversation on trying to attract new foreign direct investment into our region. And I think it's interesting to note, you know, when Mustafa talks about it takes 7 years, good years, to bring on something, you know, we find that even at the municipal level in regards to facility development or anything. When you start the conversation, it takes upwards 5 to 7 years to really nurture something. But we're going to have the conversation, and I think the 38-to-1 ratio is kind of an indication of, you know, we may be a small contributor, but I think Spruce Grove is seen as an important contributor, you know, to the conversation. And I think the opportunity for the board to be here today to make this presentation to us is an important one. And you know, it puts it right in front of council too, as well, to, you know, to give some background information on what we're trying to achieve. So are there any other questions or comments from council? Tracy, just very briefly, you did such nice, eloquent introductions to your other board members. Can you tell our city council a little bit about your role at the EIA?
Sure. And I mean, I've worked with some of you, but I'm on the executive team with the airport. I've been there for 20 years. Don't tell anyone. But a key role there was the air service and cargo development portfolio. That's why I'm on the board of Edmonton Global. So that was significantly international business development, and that's where we worked to get Icelandair, KLM, the Asia cargo route. So my background is in that international business marketing brand. And then I'm also on numerous boards. I guess the one thing I'd want to say, Mayor, is Edmonton Regional Airports Authority is similar to Edmonton Global in that we have a regional board. So the lens that I look at this, I don't look at this as Spruce Grove is making a small contribution from the airport's perspective and the board's perspective. And the way we're going to differentiate ourselves against other competitors isn't just about the funding, but it's the fact that we do have this region together with an integrated, focused plan. And so we talk about another municipality having $100,000, and that's an advantage, but we have our advantages here. And so, you know, the board is very, very much behind this, but we're also sensitive to the timing, and that's why we're taking nothing for granted being here.
Okay, thank you very much. And you'll know from you know, conversations we've had, you know, that I've shared during those conversations about the importance of this region working together and continuing to work together. We certainly don't want to see any cracks in the alliance. You know, it's not easy getting along and working together on something like this. But I think my attempt at the conversation at the board level would be try to get people to, you know, considering this leveraging opportunity for us. I do like the idea with what you talked about is for municipalities to make the commitment, but not having to pay, you know, those dollars right up front type of thing. I think that is a really good approach too, as well, for some other member municipalities. And but we'll look forward to the conversation. It's going to be a good one. And I think Mayor Iveson has been leading this pretty hard, and, you know, he more or less, what you say, put his money where his mouth was, because he did step up to soften it on everybody. And I think I may have mentioned it, but currently we pay $55,000 a year now, and this would increase our contribution by an additional $127,000. Okay, I think that's about a wrap. I just wanted to say to Bernie, Mustafa, and Tracy, thank you very much for being here this evening. Give our best to Malcolm. I know he's working hard behind the scenes, and appreciate his connection as well at the federal level with the 13 larger municipalities as well. But anyway, anything else to close it out, Tracy? Or?
No, we just really want to thank you. Thank you for the feedback. We appreciate that, and we'll take that back. And we really want to thank you, Mayor Houston. I mean, you're giving credit everywhere, but your leadership chairing Edmonton Global at a sensitive time when it was all coming together was really important for this region, for this board, for the executive. And, we've really appreciated your leadership and the council's leadership in this. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I think if council gets a chance to look at the incredible board members that we have an unbelievable board that's working with us on this to try to attract international investment into our region that is going to help everybody. So thank you very much, Tracy, for the presentation. And I'll just ask one of my colleagues on council if they could make a motion to accept your report for information. And thank you again for being here. Councillor Acker.
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Mayor, that the Edmonton Global update be received as information and that Tracy be thanked for her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll thank Bernie and Mustafa as well. And with that, I'll call the question on the motion. Okay, thank you very much. That's been carried, and take care. Thanks for joining us.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to our public question and answer period. I'm just going to ask the clerk, is there anybody here from the public that has any questions of council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I can advise that no members of the public have registered to speak. And I have also checked our city clerk C-bill box, and there has been no questions submitted via email either.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving forward, we have an administrative update. We're going to go to 9A. Mr. Wolanski is going to provide the city with a COVID update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just gives me an opportunity to kind of share with council, a little bit of an update on where we're at with COVID and all that we're doing in that regard. Currently, as of today, there are 8 active cases in Spruce Grove, 1 in Stony Plain, and 18 in Parkland County. We continue to have ongoing efforts around recovery and relaunch of city operations, but we are certainly continuing to encourage the community not only to do their part, but also, thanking them for the work that has been done to date. We would like to have, council and the public know that our website continues to be the best source of information related to COVID updates that the city is providing as it relates to the city. As late last week, the province did implement new voluntary public health measures in the Edmonton zone, which does include Spruce Grove, due to a concern in the rapid rise of cases in our zone. These voluntary health measures include limiting social and family gatherings to no more than 15 people, limiting the cohorts to no more than 3, and wearing non-medical face coverings or masks in all indoor work settings, except when alone in workspaces such as offices or cubicles. As a result of those measures, staff in all city cities were now wearing masks when they're outside of their cubicle or office space. So an example would be in the hallway, stairwell, common areas, washroom area, etc. So this would also apply to entering and exiting city facilities. So the city's temporary mandatory face covering bylaw is not going into effect yet, as we know, as a result of these new voluntary measures. As our bylaw is based on a trigger point of being placed under a watch specifically to Spruce Grove. And so although our zone has been placed under an enhanced classification by the province, again, the number of active cases in Spruce Grove remains under our threshold of the bylaw. While the measures are voluntary, and I think we've seen lots of information from the province on those, we are still encouraging our community to look out for each other and to work together to help prevent the spread and to follow these measures that have been announced. We have done an excellent job in keeping our numbers low, but certainly a regional approach is the most effective way to help limit the spread in our region and not cause any additional measures required. We know that it's been challenging, but both individually and collectively as an organization, as businesses and the community, but there are something that we can do to support regional collaboration in this regard. When we think of some city operations and events, we wanted to take some time just to give you a brief update that, as we've shared before, that public skating is now available. There are obviously our new guidelines in place, including a registration process and capacity limits. We as a city did support and recognize a day of visibility for the live event community, which has been significantly impacted by COVID-19. One of the first industries to be impacted and potentially one of the last to come back. So we lit the red light at Horizon Stage as a symbol of our support for that industry. It was nationwide that day of visibility. We are currently looking at some traditional city events. We don't have all the details yet, but we can share that, not surprisingly, the city would not be encouraging large gatherings for any events for sure, at least until the end of this year. And so that would include our Remembrance Day ceremony. And so we'll be looking at doing something a little different, and more information will come out. We certainly want to help residents honor our veterans and servicemen and women in a way that is still respectful. And we've seen lots of local and national organizations support not having gatherings in this regard. So we will be encouraging people to participate in virtual ceremonies. And we do plan to put together something to acknowledge and recognize Remembrance Day specifically from our community. And then our other big event, as council is aware and the public is aware, that's coming up is our Christmas in Central Park, or our Light Up. And again, wouldn't be prudent to have mass gathering for such event in the same way that we've done in the past. So details will be coming, but we're looking at doing something that will be a little different, but that will be able to allow for safe participation and allow people to come and enjoy the lights on that specific day that we will have planned coming up. And so that's the information I have at this point, and I'd certainly be open to any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious, a question to Mr. Wolanski. With the non-mandatory measures that were implemented by the province last week, two questions. What might trigger that becoming a mandatory requirement? So in other words, an expansion, for example, maybe a mask bylaw, or a further reduction of the number of people who may attend private functions from 15 perhaps to fewer than that. And also, has the province given us an indication of what measures might be implemented if we all hope that this doesn't happen, but if the situation worsens?
Thank you, Councillor Roth, through Mr. Mayor. We certainly have not received any indication that there will be additional measures or that they would become mandatory. We've seen in my conversations with public health officials, as well as I think messages we've heard from the Premier around the province after those measures were announced voluntary, that there was no intent at this point to have them become mandatory, regardless of any indication of if it gets worse, or that any additional restrictions or rollbacks in some of the things that have, including businesses, et cetera, would take place. That's the best information that I've been provided at this point. And so our intent, and I think the province's intent, is to really encourage people to follow these voluntary measures, and even the ones that were in place, not just for our zone, but in general, to really make a difference. And we wouldn't probably see, again, the lag effect of the measures and see their effectiveness probably wouldn't be seen for 2 to 3 weeks. So I would guess we wouldn't have any information about whether it's working or what may or may not come after that, if it's not, and for a couple more weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Roth. Mr. Wolanski, the non-mandatory wearing of masks by people in their workplaces, does this kind of apply to people in the major retail sectors like Canadian Tire and a few of those places? Are they anticipated to be seen as wearing masks based on the recommendations of Alberta Health?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that would certainly fall under that category. Any workspace that they cannot be in a office cubicle or something almost by themselves. So any common areas in a building, it would be the request is for the measures to be followed on a voluntary basis, but encourage businesses to yes, follow that component of it. So that would apply to any business, I believe, that would have common areas.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Acker, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Walensky, I'm getting asked a lot about Halloween. And I know the province has come out with some guidelines, and Dr. Henshaw has stated it's maybe one of the safer holidays to celebrate if you're outside. But is the city going to look at doing any kind of communications, you know, not recommending you have a big Halloween party at your house? And, you know, if you're going to do something or hand out treats, maybe make sure you're sanitizing. Because I'm getting asked, and I'm just referring them to the province right now, but I think it'd be good for the city to come out on our social media or do something to provide a little clarity or some recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Acker. We actually started that today. And so we did some of that messaging. So we'll be recommending following the provincial message and sharing that out, but we started that campaign today and we'll continue up until that time.
Perfect. And now I know you mentioned the Remembrance Day and the Christmas light up. I imagine also the regional Monster Mash event or the Halloween hoopla that we used to have has been canceled as well.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Acker, yes, our participation in that, you know, yes, you know, in terms of having a gathering, we're looking at again doing something, you know, if possible, but that's correct. It just would not be prudent for us to support and endorse a large gathering. We were looking at different ways in which we can do it in terms of staggering time. It just wasn't feasible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McKenzie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to administration. Mr. Walensky, I don't know if you have this information right now, but I just wanted to put it out there to bring forward. I've had a few questions in regards to Stu Barnes and the Grand Fear Arena and the way that we're utilizing the dressing rooms and the timing of things. And one of the questions that I had was at the Tri-Leisure versus at Stu Barnes, the teams are being kicked out of the rooms really quickly, and they're not even being allowed to have times to kind of have a bit of a team meeting chat or anything like they used to. Is that mostly due to cleaning, and why is it differing from the Tri-Leisure? If you know that right off the hand, but if not, if you could bring that back to us, that would be great.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor McKenzie. So it is different. It is everything that we did related to our protocols were in conjunction with and in partnership with all of the minor sports organizations. We were actually one of, when we looked at our regional colleagues, I would hesitate to say only, but one of the only that actually talked to them and worked with them in advance. Other municipalities set their own process, said, here they are. So those were developed with them and approved by those organizations prior to. And it is to not have we wanted to make sure that we had as much opportunity for people to still utilize ice time, and there's additional cleaning and there's additional things that need to happen. So we do have, I think it's within 15 minutes that we require them to vacate after use. And that will be continued to be evaluated. We've just been starting that since we opened in September, and we'll continue to evaluate that moving forward to see if it needs to change or can be adapted. And we would do that in partnership with those sports organizations.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I did indicate that I'm sure that we're following certain standards and stuff. The other question that I have is just to put it out there. I know a lot of the the recreational hockey and the ringette teams and such, they're really struggling right now because they do a lot of dry land training. And currently right now they can't use any of the facilities in the area. The gymnasiums and that sort of thing are not available for rent. And so I just wondered what is the city's policy right now on the, I believe we call it the agri room and or the lounge up there, that area? And would that be a potential for our sports teams to be able to utilize, or do we have that completely closed as of right now?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor McKenzie, it is closed as of right now, and we'll continue to evaluate that. But right now, yes, we have determined that in the best interest of those plans that we would keep that closed. for now. I should mention, Mr. Mayor, I think it's an important one, and I skipped over it in my update. But if people are aware and saw that the federal government did announce, I know it's been a real important thing to council about how we can provide as much information and help businesses to know what's out there. And so there was a number of new things announced just last week, and we will continue to work and to make sure that businesses and the community are aware of what those supports are. So there's some additional things around rent subsidies and continuation of certain things, but also new ones. So just forgot to mention, I think that's something that council has been really felt was important, that we continue to share that, and we will continue to do that, get that message out to businesses and the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one additional question. I know we're feeling it in the air and the weather's turning, but is there any impacts or plans for the outdoor rinks flooding? Are we going to still maintain the same number of surfaces? Is the first question. And the second, is there going to be a need or an online, you have to register your time to come to Central Park to skate? Is there any of those requirements that we have to be looking at as we get into the winter months?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Acker. Yes, we are developing that right now. I know our team is working on sort of maintenance, but then also protocols and for both all the outdoor rinks, and not just the rinks, but the leisure surfaces. So more to come, because sadly we might be there sooner than later. I had some snow down in Calgary this weekend, so yes, we are working on that, and so we'll have that well in advance of when they would open. So thank you, great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, could I get a motion, please, to accept Mr. Wolanski's report on COVID-19 for information? Councillor Oldham.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that Mr. Wolanski's report on COVID be received as information.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call the question on the motion. Okay, I've had a online request for a very quick comfort break, so I'd like to call a recess for 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. And we're moving on to business items under 11A. Could I get a motion, please, for 11A?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor. The policy CP 1016-19 asset management be approved as presented.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Bourget. This is your item to speak to, so welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good evening. I'm just going to share my screen and share a short presentation. And can you advise if that presentation has surfaced in front of you? Excellent.
Yep,
Thank you kindly. All righty. Well, tonight we come before you to seek the endorsement of the asset management policy you first discussed back in May of this year. The following presentation speaks to the policy content briefly, but equally importantly, to the why of the policy and what it will enable and ensure accountability of, particularly in advance of the coming meetings that Council will deliberate over capital funding decisions to manage the life cycling assets of the municipality. Just going to get my mouse working here. There we go. So a bit of a flashback. What did we hear from Council back in the spring? This slide outlines the reminder of what direction and perspective you provided us when it came to asset management and what expectations you had of administration and what commitments administration is making to Council with respect to asset management. And particularly on those commitments, if we look at the evolve the model for governance decisions around the assets. So these asset management plan concepts and asset management life cycle plans. These were key pieces that surfaced through that conversation back in May. So this slide gives you a quick snapshot of what's actually in the policy itself and the key concepts. When you reviewed the policy in May, it was clear that roles and responsibilities were key, as was the need for administration to have a way to brief and enable Council to discuss the approach and plans for city assets at a systems level. While we have not brought forward asset plans as per se today, to you at this time, we will ensure that the policy enables the governance as we move forward on this approach. So this is a bit of a refresher why we need an asset management policy and that clarity that it brings to bear in terms of roles and responsibilities around transparency and governance. It also is a reminder of how substantive our investments are, and that we can see here with an approximate value of 737 million. And we've talked a lot as a community, a municipality, around our assets, particularly as they have grown, as the community has grown. But we have not always been able to financially set aside for them. So some of this is due to budgetary pressure, sometimes due to limited information and a framework to assess the optimal investment and life cycling strategy for each of these assets. Some of these assets we have are visual to the residents every day. Others, while used daily, do not visually pop into one's mind. Things like the sanitary and storm systems, for example. It is important for the citizens to know the broad range of these assets and what is required to maintain, or what we call life cycle them. So getting into that life cycling concept, and I surfaced this only because this will be a topic as we get into budget deliberations later this fall, but we look at what that condition is. That is important from a health perspective, and one that we've been actively using now for a number of years is on roads with the Pavement Quality Index. We are also looking to continue to build the classification system in these other assets as well. But this will take some time to build as we continue to grow our capacity under the asset policy. So with almost 750 million in assets, they all need to be maintained. And this rapid growth, whether in roads, sport facilities, water lines, or all other assets, require maintenance. This asset management policy will enable the governance process that will build these asset management plans and inform decisions on what condition the city wants to maintain these assets in, because there's different strategies you can employ as governors of that system. And each one of those assets can have a different type of index attached to it. So lastly, what can you expect from coming forward next? This asset management policy enables a framework of strategies and activities to unfold, from condition assessment to risk evaluation to the budget deliberations on how much to invest in asset maintenance or life cycling. The policy will provide the governance for this suite of work to be carried out with quality and timely information through a risk management lens to inform capital planning budgetary decisions. It is these capital planning budgetary decisions that we will bring forward to council in the coming weeks. So that was why the timing of this policy was so imperative. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Beaujay. Any questions or comments from council? Councillor McKenzie.
So I just want for clarity, when we're looking at creating this policy, I guess my question is, every year, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it that the policy dictates how much we're spending or what we're picking, or is it the capital plan and then we update the policy? Just for clarity.
Great question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McKenzie. In a mature, robust asset management system, you would be bringing forward asset management plans in an asset management system. We are still on that journey of building that. That being said, what we have done in preparation for the budget deliberations coming this fall is built what we believe is the best assessment right now on options on how to approach the condition and whether we want to look at average life versus extended life on these assets. And that's our starting place to inform your budget deliberations. But in the long run, and this is why we talk about the commitment to you folks, administration would be bringing in asset management plans by those categories and walking you through holistically, what would that look and feel like? It won't take you necessarily specific into the very details of a particular sidewalk or something, but it would certainly speak to scale, condition assessment, and health assessment that you want to have your group of assets at.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's what and I understand it's going to be a transition into it, and I guess my hope was in long term we should have our asset policies and we should try to limit that from changing as much as possible, and let's focus on what constitutes bringing it up to the table, and then within the budget, I guess we just determine where that line occurs and what gets put in that particular year. So thank you. This is a lot of work. I've worked on asset management plans, both with the province and with both Edmonton and Parkland County. And so I know how much work is going into this, and I'm really excited seeing this moving forward. And I think it will really help us, especially on the capital side of things, to truly determine which projects should be above and below the line and how we proceed and move forward in developing our community. So thank you for all your hard work on this.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess my comment is this is a policy in regards to an implementation of a plan that we would, look at bringing this forward for further discussions in our budget deliberations. So does that mean with this policy that we're going to implement it in regards to the budget or budget deliberations coming up? And does that mean there's a plan by administration to set aside, for example, I'm going to use the number $2 million to be transferred into an asset management fund? Or am I off base on that one?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what would be fair to say is the policy enables the governance frame, of which administration is going to use that governance frame to provide you with some budgetary choices around how to approach implementing the policy.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. That's all I needed. Councillor Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, and it's something that may not need to be in here, but I thought I would ask it. Within the policy, I don't see any accountability to our residents and ratepayers, whether we're reporting to them on asset quality on an annual basis, if there's any commitment in the governance side of what we will be doing with all this information and how we move forward. But I think there might be some value in having something tied in on a reporting or responsibility. Or maybe it doesn't need to be. I thought I'd just ask the question.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Acker. So the way we described the roles and responsibilities was about the accountability in the system. And it's, and perhaps this is my language, but from an implicit standpoint, the accountability to the residents surfaces through the feeding of the asset management plans to you folks for that determination of where on the spectrum of maintenance do you want to maintain. And so that was our interpretation of how that accountability to the residents, because you choose the condition you want to maintain your roadway, which speaks to your residents and your constituents, what that accountability looks like. So it was a, how should I say, it was an outcome to the residents from the governance system. Does that help?
That works for me. No, thank you so much.
You bet.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. Just didn't see, okay, Councillor Oldham, there you go. Thank you. That's been carried. Hey, we have 11B and 12A are on our, so could I get a member motion, please, to go into closed session? Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council go into closed section under section 17 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, RSA 2000 CF 25.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll call the question on the motion to go into closed session. Okay, thank you. That's been carried. Just waiting for Councillor Roth and Councillor McKenzie. There's Councillor Roth. Okay, we're just wanted to call the meeting back to order. We are back in open session, and we have some business arising from the closed session. And could I get a motion, please, in regards to 13A? Councillor Stevenson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll base this on the conversation we had. So there's a slight alteration to the motion based on our conversation. So I'll read it as such, and then if you disagree with me, disagree with me. That the following individuals be appointed as members of the Economic Development Advisory Committee of Council. Mr. Kelly Rose, Mr. Victor Moroz, Ms. Charlene Bell, Mr. Bruce Mullet, Mr. Robert Smith, for a term ending December 31st, 2022, and Mr. Braven Blackwell, Ms. Heather Shuchuk, and Mr. Anthony Warbeck for a term ending December 31st, 2023.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Walker, does that align pretty much with the changes requested by Councillor Stevenson in regards to the discussions? You're muted, Mr. Walker.
There we go. Yes, that is that motion is quite acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments in regards to the motion from Councillor Stevenson? Okay, thank you very much for the motion, Councillor Stevenson. Looks like a great group. Thank you very much, Mr. Walker, for the effort in bringing this all together. And call the question on the motion. Okay, thank you very much. That's been carried. Could I get a motion, please, for 13B? Councillor Oldham.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the recommendation of the 2020 winner of the Community Spirit Award be approved as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. And that Community Spirit Award will be presented at the upcoming event next week. Councillor Oldham will be there to make the presentation as the Deputy Mayor, and looking forward to you doing that. With that, it's still a secret. So with that, we certainly appreciate the effort of individuals in our community that kind of rise above with that. So with that, I'll call the question on the motion for the Community Spirit Award. Okay, thank you very much. That's been carried. Could I get a motion, please, for 13C? Councillor Grilke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that council accept the report on the options to purchase agreement as information, and that the options agreement extension be negotiated to include, but not limited to, the terms outlined in Beaverbrook's request on December 11th, 2019.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments in regards to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. Okay, thank you very much. That's been carried. And that concludes our session this evening. Unfortunately, it's going to end a little bit earlier than we normally do, but with that, I'd ask for one more motion.
I'll move adjournment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, moved by Councillor Acker to adjourn. Any questions or comments in regards to the adjournment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the motion. All those unanimously approved that motion. So thank you very much, everyone, and thanks to administration for the presentations this evening. Good night, everyone. Take care. Stay safe. Bye now.